If it's August, it must be time for another Dragon Ball Z game. This is our 6th game based on the popular franchise, 8th if you want to count the 2 Famicom jump games, or the 5th if you're only counting the card-based RPGs. Regardless of how many games it is, Bandai's been hitting this one a lot. Though Dragon Ball ZIII is an odd milestone. In a subtle way, this is the end of the line. Dragon Ball, of course, is the wildly popular cartoon and comic series about Goku, Princess of the Moon who fights evil alongside her planetary-themed court. Bandai had already made the transition over to the Super Famicom with their card-based RPGs for Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan Densetsu was basically a reworking of the first 2 games in the Dragon Ball Z series from the Famicom. For whatever reason, that's the only game in this style on the Super Famicom. They just decided to stick with the regular Famicom for these from that point on. Dragon Ball ZIII has a subtitle, Messen Jinzo Ningen, or the Fierce Battle Against the Androids. The game Dragon Ball ZIII adapts the android arc, starting off with the defeat of Frieza and ending with a confrontation with the 4 numbered androids. And only 4 androids. Definitely no other android. This is the final Dragon Ball Z game on the Famicom to follow the plot of the television show. And right there's a pretty good reason why. The previous game ended in a big brawl with Frieza, but that's something that anyone could see coming. It wasn't some big plot twist that Goku would wind up hitting Frieza hard enough to defeat him. But here, well, the show and the comic are still in the process of figuring out what they're going to do with those androids, so the game basically just has to come to a stop. The ending does feature an incredibly brief appearance by the next enemy, but it's really perfunctory. Which is why in the next game, Bandai abandons trying to copy the cartoon, and instead just has their own story. As in most of the previous Dragon Ball games, this is an RPG where everything is driven by a hand of cards that you're dealt. I've mentioned in previous videos that I really don't like this system, and Dragon Ball ZIII makes some pretty significant changes to it that make it much worse. The cards in this game have a number of stars in the upper left, or a Z, a symbol in the middle, which is the card's suit, and a symbol in the lower right that has a chance to add special effects when you use that card. When you're in the overworld, you have 3 options: Move, Menu, and Map. Map just lets you look around the area, and Menu goes to some more seldom used options, such as your inventory, party composition, and saving the game. There are 2 battery save slots on Dragon Ball ZIII, though it doesn't mark when they're in use or tell you what level the characters are, so it's a little bit confusing there. When you choose Move, you pick one of your cards, and you move a number of spaces depending on the dots in the upper left-hand corner, or 8 if it's a Z. Then you have a chance for a random encounter where you'd fight an enemy, and if you don't have a random encounter, then you might have an effect from the card. The one that's really significant on the map are the weights, which might take you to a training session. These make you play mini-games for extra experience points. You might have to hit the D-pad in the direction where this guy appears, or just randomly get setups and punchlines, or have to play a card that's higher than what the other person plays. For that one, you can quit at any time by hitting B, but the more you win, the more experience you get. All of your characters start at level 30, and you have 6 characters available to you at the start. But the way it works is that only the first 3 do any fighting, while the other 3 could be summoned in as support characters, depending on what cards you play. Really, it's best to pick 3 for your party, and then just stick with them. When you get into combat, you can choose to fight or run away, and if you are fighting, you can hit an auto button or manually select cards. You pick a character, and then you pick a card. If a card is blinking, then picking it will let that character use their special abilities. Everyone has an option to rest and recover energy, and a free energy blast. And then after that, characters have abilities that use up some energy. Combat's a place where the symbol in the lower right will almost always activate, though it won't always do something. For many of those symbols, it could change into a picture of a house, in which case nothing happens. Selecting a heart will result in healing. The amount varies depending on which character shows up, and you can always choose who receives the healing. The fist cards have effects on the current combat, applying status effects to enemies or boosting your own abilities. The cards that have pictures of, well, cards in the lower right-hand corner affect the other cards in your hand, changing their values or shuffling the whole thing. Both the foot and the exclamation point are kind of broad. I can't really find a collective theme among them other than the exclamation point having the larger effects. So the foot can do things like giving you extra experience for walking around, or lowering the value of your cards, while the exclamation point could have your entire party take an attack, instantly kill one enemy, or grant you 3 wishes. The only things you can really wish for are experience points, recovery, improving one card, or reviving a dead character. The beginning of the game throws you straight into a very easy fight against Frieza, and then after the cutscene, you have to wander the Earth locating Dragon Balls. I actually never managed to collect any of them, because you're locked out until you step on just the right space. So I was chasing the Dragon Radar around for a while, unable to reach some of the targets I was going after, and I was constantly getting attacked, which slows the game down a lot. Eventually, after you level up enough, the random combats become abstracted, but they're still slow. You have to watch this animation play out for quite a while. Dragon Ball Z3 is not well regarded in Japan. Most notably, they extended a very short segment of the cartoon to be 75% of the game. The game's also fairly short, and it cuts off right at the point when the plot's getting interesting. Children at the time felt like they were getting ripped off when they bought this one. On top of that, there isn't a lot of benefit to leveling up. Characters can only gain about 10 levels over the course of the entire game, and I gained 5 while I was playing. Damage, health, and power only increase incrementally. I haven't been fond of this series as I've been going through Famidaily, and I feel like the changes to the combat wound up making everything drag even more than it already did. These games really haven't been much fun, and even though we have one more to go, you could really consider Dragon Ball Z3 to be the game that killed the series.